Ever feel like you're just running on empty, trying to keep up with everything life throws your way?
Yeah, that feeling of just being overwhelmed.
What if there was a way to not just, cope, but to actually understand it all, navigate that chaos?
That's really the core of what we're going to unpack today, isn't it?
It is. We're diving deep into the life and the insights of Jonathan Baker. It's all laid out in his books, Never Too Late to Slow Down Freedom Through Awareness, and also The Mindful Musician, a journey of addiction and awakening.
And what we have here is, well, it's a really powerful personal story. It gives such a genuine look at one person's challenges and how mindfulness really became this transformative force for him.
Right. So our mission for you, the learner, is to really get to the heart of what mindfulness is all about, how it can shift a life that's been marked by, well, restlessness, addiction, and that kind of deep search for meaning.
And it's not just theory, that's the key.
Exactly. This is someone's real lived experience we're talking about.
Precisely. We're exploring a deeply personal narrative. It's rich with, those telling moments, but also really thoughtful reflections on it all.
This is such a compelling story. Honestly, I think it'll connect with anyone who's ever felt a bit adrift or maybe stuck. Jonathan's life has definitely had its peaks and valleys, you could say.
To say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his journey toward finding a different way of being, it's just full of these unexpected turns and, wow, some truly significant moments of realization. Okay, let's unpack this.
Where should we start? Early life.
Let's do that. Let's start by looking at his early life, some of those foundational influences. He describes as a real contrast in his childhood home. There was a loving mother, apparently brought a lot of laughter, even though the household could be kind of sarcastic. But then a father who was often verbally harsh.
Right, and seemed to be carrying his own pain, didn't he, from his own background?
Yeah, an abusive upbringing, it sounds like,
Yeah.
and often absent.
That early contrast is so often, well, a defining factor. It shapes your emotional world. The warmth from his mother must have been a crucial balance against the father's difficulties.
And there was this significant lack of stability, too, wasn't there? He mentions moving. Get this, over 70 times by his mother's count.
70 times. Wow. That really highlights a lack of a consistent sense of home, not tied to a place anyway.
Absolutely.
That constant change, it can definitely contribute to feeling unrooted. Maybe makes it harder to form secure connections later on.
He also talks about his brother being a really important figure, like both a friend and someone he looked up to, almost like a second father figure.
Okay.
And it's interesting, apparently Jonathan and his father would both often complain to the brother about each other. Kind of triangulated, maybe.
Ah, yeah, that creates a specific dynamic. What's fascinating there is how those early experiences, the instability, the sort of emotional inconsistency, how that can lay the groundwork for, well, a lifelong search for security.
Yeah.
For belonging. The brother becomes this important, maybe unintentional source of support in a really challenging family environment.
Okay, this next part really made me think. Moving into his teenage years in Charlotte, he felt like a total outsider. Long hair, metal band t-shirts.
The uniform.
Right. And he had this surprising first encounter where someone mistook him for a hood, which he only later realized was, like, slang for a fellow metalhead.
Huh. Yeah, that experience really highlights how quick we are to categorize people, doesn't it, based on just appearances, something he later learned to look beyond himself through mindfulness.
Good point. But it was also during this time he found this incredible escape, this refuge, really, in music. Started guitar at 12. He called it his own little universe. He was just deeply passionate, teaching himself by ear, influenced by thrash metal, even trying to form bands early on.
Yeah. And for the learner listening, it's important to see how those early passions, they can be such a comfort, right? But sometimes maybe also a way to avoid dealing with deeper stuff. Music became his sanctuary. It's a really common experience for people trying to find their place. It gives an outlet for those intense emotions.
Then comes a move to Illinois.
Yeah.
He drops out of high school, works at Taco Bell.
Right.
All while still holding on to that dream, Fame, world touring musician and famous actor. That pull of external success is strong.
Oh, absolutely. That promise of recognition, of escape through music or acting, it's a powerful draw, especially when you're young.
And this is where he introduces this really insightful concept he calls gotta mode. That constant striving, always searching for external validation, the next big thing that's got to make him happy or successful. He even mentions clinging to brief relationships, just desperate for someone who wouldn't leave. What struck you about gotta mode?
Oh, this Gotta mode is such a crucial insight. So many of us operate from that place, don't we? That constant striving, believing happiness is just around the corner, and the next achievement, the next relationship. Jonathan's story really shows the emptiness that can lead to this constant seeking. It often comes from that deep-seated belief that I'm not enough as I am,
Right.
which is a core thing. Mindfulness helps dismantle, fostering that self-acceptance instead. And the desperate clinging to relationships. That speaks right back to that underlying need for security we were just talking about.
So this constant searching, it seems like it led him down some pretty difficult paths, including substance use. He talks about experiences with marijuana, even weekend heroin use starting back in East St. Louis, selling marijuana too.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a common pattern, doesn't it, when people are looking to fill some kind of internal void or just escape discomfort.
It really is. Substances can offer that temporary relief, that escape, but ultimately they tend to deepen the very issues they're meant to sort of patch over.
Then there's a move to Missouri,
Uh-huh.
a relationship marked by alcohol abuse. He paints this picture, exciting beginnings that just quickly devolved into instability, that
Yeah.
cycle.
Yeah, that cycle of really intense beginnings followed by decline. That's often a sign of deeper relational patterns. Unmet emotional needs are usually playing a big role there.
And the years that followed sound like they were marked by a lot of isolation, countless breakups, frequent moves again, really underscoring that recurring feeling of abandonment he talks about.
It's so important, I think, to acknowledge these struggles, the substance use, the difficult relationships, not with judgment, obviously, but seeing them as part of a pattern of seeking escape, seeking connection, but in unhealthy ways. It's a pattern many people can unfortunately relate to.
Yeah.
And the constant moving just reinforces that lack of a stable foundation, doesn't it?
But things do start to shift, right? There's a definite turning point. The tragic death of his mother in 2011.
Mm-hmm. A huge loss.
He talks about the initial confusion, the grief,
Hmm.
followed by this period of really trying to make a living through a solo music career. It seems like significant loss often triggers that kind of reevaluation.
Mm-hmm. It often does. It forces you to re-examine your life, your priorities. Although the immediate aftermath can be just a time of profound disorientation, naturally.
And even with this new focus on music,
Yeah.
he was still battling chronic anxiety, panic attacks. But interestingly, he credits his girlfriend from Brazil, her patience, her understanding as being a real catalyst for change.
That makes sense.
Sometimes it's that unwavering support that really makes the difference, isn't it?
Absolutely. Often it's in those moments of significant loss or the consistent positive presence of another person that the real momentum for change begins. This relationship sounds like it provided a crucial anchor for him, maybe offered a different kind of connection than he'd known before.
And this leads right into the pivotal moment, the discovery of mindfulness. He mentions finding books like Wherever You Go, There You Are,
A classic.
and Full Catastrophe Living. And he was really struck by John Kabat-Zinn's approach, how accessible it felt, how down to earth.
Yeah, the straightforward, non-religious nature of Kabat-Zinn's work often resonates deeply, especially with people who might feel resistant to more, let's say, traditional spiritual or self-help methods.
He even did an online meditation retreat with Kabat-Zinn. Found the teachings on acceptance profoundly impactful.
Acceptance is key.
But it's interesting, he mentions a disappointing group therapy session he went to, which ironically kind of pushed him to realize he had to teach meditation himself.
That really highlights something important, doesn't it? How finding the right guidance, that genuine personal connection to a practice, can be truly transformative, whereas more impersonal approaches might just fall flat.
Right.
And his desire to share what actually helped him, that suggests a real internal shift, moving beyond just focusing on his own struggles.
So he starts to deepen his practice. He completes MBSR courses. Maybe just briefly, for listeners who might not know, what exactly is MBSR?
Sure. MBSR stands for Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. It's a well-established program, usually 8 weeks. It combines mindfulness meditation, some gentle yoga, and body awareness exercises. The goal is to help people learn to work more effectively with stress, pain, illness, really the difficulties of life.
Okay, gotcha. So he does these courses, and he really starts to get that meditation isn't about reaching some special higher state. It's about simply returning to the present moment. Again and again. That understanding feels fundamental, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely fundamental. It takes away all the pressure. The pressure to perform or achieve some specific outcome when you sit down to meditate. It's just about being present.
He also mentions gaining insights into things like internalized racism and sexism through this deeper practice and connecting with figures like Rhonda McGee. How does mindfulness actually help with uncovering those complex social issues within ourselves?
That's a great question. As mindfulness cultivates this deeper awareness, noticing our thoughts, our biases, but without judgment, it can start to bring to the surface these really deeply ingrained societal messages, things we might not even consciously recognize we hold.
Okay.
This increased awareness then allows for a process of questioning them, seeing them more clearly, and potentially starting to release those harmful internalizations. It's powerful work.
Yeah, sounds like it. And we see this shift in him moving away from identifying solely as a rock star
Right.
to finding real purpose in teaching mindfulness and also working at a medical cannabis dispensary. It really highlights a change in values, doesn't it? Focusing on helping others, practicing non-judgment,
Mhm.
compassion.
Exactly.
What specific mindful principles do you think might have been really applicable in his work at the dispensary? Seems like an interesting place to practice.
Oh, absolutely. This whole journey just demonstrates such a profound shift in values away from external validation towards inner peace and connection. In the dispensary context, wow, the principles of non-judgment and compassion would be invaluable, wouldn't they?
Totally.
Interacting with people facing all sorts of health challenges, and present moment awareness, too, being able to truly listen and respond to their needs right there and then.
Makes perfect sense. Now, one of the really complex parts of his story, and maybe one of the toughest, is his relationship with his father.
Mm-hmm.
He attempts to rebuild that connection as his father gets older, becomes more erratic. He even moves back into his father's house for a time, which sounds like it just descended into chaos. Difficult family dynamics are such a common source of pain for so many.
They really are. And that desire to reconcile with aging parents, it's often so powerful even when the relationship has a history of deep hurt.
He ultimately makes the incredibly difficult decision to cut off contact for self-preservation, he says. And he reframes compassion, saying it doesn't include self-destruction. That's a really powerful reframe.
It is powerful. And some might see that decision as harsh from the outside.
Right.
But this part of the story is particularly relevant, I think. It shows that compassion isn't always about endless giving, about martyrdom. Sometimes true compassion requires setting really healthy boundaries, prioritizing your own well-being, even when it involves difficult family dynamics.
Yeah.
Mindfulness helps us see clearly, hopefully, when our attempts to help are actually causing us further harm. And it gives us the strength, maybe, to act with compassion towards ourselves in those situations. It's a crucial lesson in self-care, really.
Wow. Okay, so reflecting on this whole journey, this deep dive into his life, what are some of those core principles of mindfulness that really stand out? Things that offer practical tools for our listeners, for the learner?
Well, several core themes just emerge again and again, don't they? First, just fundamental present moment awareness. That simple but actually profound act of just paying attention to what's happening right now without judging it.
Simple but not easy sometimes.
Definitely not easy. Then there's acceptance, allowing things to be as they are rather than constantly fighting reality. Non-judgment, observing our thoughts, our feelings without slapping labels on them. Self-compassion, treating ourselves with that same kindness we'd hopefully offer a friend. And gratitude, noticing and appreciating the good, even when things are tough.
He also talks about non-striving, this idea of letting go of the need to control everything, just being present with the experience as it unfolds. For someone constantly feeling that pressure, to achieve at work or in their personal life, that concept of non-striving can feel almost revolutionary, can it?
Absolutely. It's so counterintuitive to our goal-obsessed society, but non-striving in mindfulness allows for this deeper relaxation, this acceptance of the present, and paradoxically that often leads to more effective, less stressed action anyway.
And the crucial point that meditation is a practice. It's not a performance. It's not a competition. There's no winning at meditation, is there?
Exactly. It's just about consistent engagement, showing up for it, not about achieving some perfect, blissful state every time. Every moment of practice, even when your mind feels like a runaway train, is valuable.
He also touches on this really liberating idea that thoughts, they're just fleeting mental events. We don't have to get carried away by every single one.
Yes. That recognition creates this crucial space, this distance between us and our thoughts. It reduces their power over our emotions or behaviors. You start to see them as just passing phenomena, not absolute truths about reality or about you.
And how all of this leads to that shift away from that constant gotta mode, that striving, to actually choosing presence in everyday life. It's about understanding these concepts, not just intellectually, right, but how they can actually be applied to reduce that feeling of overwhelm, to increase clarity for the learner.
Precisely. It's about consciously choosing again and again, to inhabit this moment rather than constantly chasing the next one or regretting the last one.
So, bringing it all together then, what's the central message that really resonates most strongly from Jonathan's deep dive into his own life and into mindfulness?
I think the overarching message is both incredibly simple and deeply powerful. It's never too late to slow down.
Yeah.
That true freedom, that lasting freedom, it doesn't come from the external achievements or those fleeting pleasures. It comes through accepting what is and cultivating that inner awareness, the present moment, which we so often overlook in our rush. That's where life actually unfolds, with all its imperfections, all its beauty.
Jonathan's journey with all its incredible ups and downs, it really does point to that profound truth, doesn't it? That inner peace is always available. It's right here, right now. If we can just learn to cultivate the awareness to find it, it feels like a really powerful message of hope.
Indeed, and it's a message that's accessible to everyone, regardless of their past.
Jonathan Baker's story is just one of real depth, real honesty, and his books offer truly valuable insights, I think, into mindfulness and personal transformation. His willingness to share his vulnerabilities just makes his experiences all the more relatable, more impactful for us.
Absolutely. His openness provides such a powerful example. It shows the courage it takes to really look inward and the potential for profound change that exists within that.
We really hope this deep dive has provided you, the learner, with concise yet thorough understanding of some really powerful ideas around mindfulness and personal transformation. It's a good reminder, isn't it, that gaining knowledge doesn't have to be overwhelming. Sometimes the most profound insights come from one person's courageous exploration of their own life.
And that the journey itself towards greater self-awareness, towards peace, it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. Every step, every single moment of practice, it contributes to the overall progress. There's no wasted effort.
So if Jonathan's story or these concepts of mindfulness really resonated with you today, we absolutely encourage you to seek out his books. That's Never Too Late to Slow Down and The Mindful Musician, or explore the work of teachers like Jon Kabat-Zinn. There's a whole world of wisdom out there waiting to be discovered.
Engaging with those resources can offer further guidance, practical tools, different perspectives, just things to deepen your own understanding and application of these principles in your life.
So consider this. In a world that constantly pushes us to do more, be more, achieve more, what if true strength actually lies in simply being present with what is?
Something to ponder.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.